I always prided myself on the fact that nobody was harder on me than I was on myself. I didn't really need a coach to push me because no coach would push me harder than I would push myself. I didn't really need a lot of people to criticize me because my own critic was brutal and harsh, and yes, need I say more? Yet last week I found myself in an epic group of powerhouse women, and the conversation was opened to the inner critic and how we have to fight our own inner critic every single time that we step up into our greatness. I had a different take on it, and that's what I want to share with you today. Hey, if we've not met before, my name is Elle Nagy. I am a rich life advisor and I work with ambitious women who have mastered the art of achievement and who's now ready to create a life that is rich and beautiful and fulfilling and pleasure-filled so that they can live this as their new legacy. The inner critic. I think where I want to start is with the realization that it's not worth fighting any part of the self. You see, the very first thing that we do in Women Reimagined is remembrance, remembering who we truly are, remembering what we truly are as the human and the being spirit having a human experience, and thereby understanding that everything that the human is experiencing is benefiting the being, is benefiting spirit, and therefore in our wholeness, in our oneness with the universe, benefiting everything and everybody. So, when you start having a look at all the aspects of the human experience and we judge them, that is where suffering comes in. It's not suffering because of what's happening. Suffering comes from our judgment of what is happening. And I think the greatest suffering in a woman comes in the self-abandonment that we are all raised to do because we are constantly rejecting and fighting parts of ourselves, part of the human experience, and making them evil, making them the thing to get rid of, including the inner critic. A lot of the judgment and the fighting, though, comes from fear. And fear makes us rush. Fear makes us being constantly driven. And in that constant, we never have the presence that comes from calm, that comes from certainty, that comes from true empowerment, and that comes from love to do proper introspection and proper conversation with self. So when I have a look at the inner critic now, the very first thing that I have to ask myself is, why is this voice coming up for me right now? Please start understanding that I am no longer fighting the voice, because I have come to understand that everything that we pour energy into takes energy away from what I could be creating instead. I think a really important point here is the fact that everything that we give focus to, give energy to, grows. So when we are fighting the inner critic, for instance, we are expending force energy and therefore really only strengthening the inner critic. The very thing that we are resisting, the very thing that we are trying to repel, we are in fact strengthening. It's a lose-lose situation if you are still fighting yourself, if you are still fighting the women in the mirror or the voices in your head or the inner critic, whatever you want to call it. Stop fighting yourself. The moment you stop the fight, the fear dispels, because the fight only comes from fear. So if the inner critic, let's call her the inner critic just for the sake of this conversation, comes up in whatever circumstance, have presence to first of all become aware of the inner critic, and then start using your discernment to ask yourself, is this inner criticism a reflection of my allowance of deviating from my standards that I have set for myself? If so, thank you, inner critic. Let me pull my socks up in this and actually raise my standards for myself again, not for any other reason other than living in integrity with who I choose to be. Very important. This is an integrity piece. Because if we are living out of integrity, if we are letting our standards slide for whatever reason, and for the most part, what I observe is women let their standards slide so that they can fit into others in the environment, so that they don't stand out, so that they don't get criticized, so that they don't get attacked. Who do you think you are? So that is just your inner self giving you that awareness so you can raise your standards once more to what is in integrity with you. So that is the one possibility. The other possibility is the inner critic is simply a conditioned voice, which normally doesn't even belong to you. This is years and decades of conditioning through parents, teachers, family members, society at large, friendships, all of the things that give us these stories that condition our way of thinking. So when you think about your brain as a muscle and thinking as a muscle, that muscle forms certain patterns. So if you only ever practice running with your legs, and your leg muscles are 100% conditioned to run, but you never give them stretching, for instance, the muscles will become really, really short. And so injuries start occurring. Well, your thinking patterns are exactly the same. You've just been thinking in a certain way that feels 100% natural to you now, and it's time to disrupt the pattern. It's time for you to start thinking in a new way that will create a different and better experience for you. So if it is the conditioned thinking that's coming up as the inner critic, then start asking it the questions. Why are you saying this? Whose voice is this anyway? What are you afraid of? What will happen? And am I willing to live with that? Because what you will find is majority of the time, it's not real fear. It is just potential things that could happen down the line. And because you are conditioned in a certain pattern, your thoughts will gravitate towards the worst case scenario instead of the best case scenario. The good news is you get to practice that muscle into a new direction, darling. But so now, all of a sudden, the energy has gone out of that inner critic voice, especially if it has come from fear conditioning, if it's not even relevant, if it's not just an indication of you allowing your standards to drop to fit into your environment. And because the energy is out of that, it leaves. It literally just leaves, and you can then choose the action with ease and grace and intelligence of how you're going to act in the next moment. What is the aligned action that you are going to take in the next moment? So what we are starting to see with this, darling, is as we are no longer rejecting parts of ourselves, when we are no longer judging parts of ourselves, A, the suffering dissipates, B, the fear evaporates, and C, we have way more energy to focus on the things we actually want to create instead of expending all of that energy to fight ourselves and our inner critics. How much more would you experience in life if things were flowing, if things were just easy, a sense of ease in your life, instead of constantly having to be in fights or flight modes? Just something for you to think about. Now, one of the spaces that I have created for you is the Rich Life Recalibration, which is a deep dive 4-hour intensive in which we connect with your soul desires, what it is that you desire to experience next in this amazing life that you have been gifted. And who are you? The identity piece as the woman who's already living this experience. What you will find is instead of setting goals that you have to constantly execute on so that you can have the promised experience at the end, your life becomes rich day to day, moment to moment in the living of the experience instead of the chasing of the experience and the outcomes. So if that's of interest to you, have a look in the description. There's a link with all of the details as well as an application form. And I can't wait to have the conversation with you to really delve into the richness of your desires that is ready to be experienced by you. If this conversation has been meaningful for you, I would so appreciate to hear from you. Let me know, where are you still fighting yourself or rejecting parts of you? And think about what is the price that you are really paying in expending all this energy in fighting something that is so natural and so beautiful and has got so much to gift you every single moment. After all, darling, you are the artist and the art. Why not make your life a masterpiece? Can't wait to see you next week. Until then, cheers.